welcome to the first TED at CBA conference. I'm your host tonight, Vitalis Canero, and the media and marketing team, the Christian Formation and Spiritual Life peer ministry groups that work really hard on this. We're pleased tonight to have a Jesuit priest, Father McCullen, to start our TED conference today. So without further ado, let's start.
How are you today?
Good.
Back from break, feeling bright-eyed and ready to tackle the semester, right? Yeah, I know. We're not quite back in session at Lemoyne, and students come back next week, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if only for like one more week. But so I was really honored by the invitation to come tonight. So thanks to Mary Frances. Where is she? Thank you. She got me into a panic when she said, we want you to give a TED Talk. And I'm thinking, a TED Talk? Like, the stakes are very high, you know? 15 to 18 minutes of packed, like, information coming at you, very engaging. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you guys to do most of the work, all right? I know it's been a long day, but I actually hope that it's kind of a relaxing and fun thing that I'm going to ask you to do over the next 15 to 18 minutes. So are you ready to sort of explore faith in the modern world with me?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to ask you to do, actually, is in order sometimes to tap into our inner lives, to our spirits, to our sense of God within us, we actually have to disconnect in order to connect. So what I'd ask you to do is, do you have one of these cell phone kinds of things? Instead of just putting it on the non-ringer mode, I'm going to ask us, we just turn it off. So join me in turning your device off.
No, I can't turn it off.
What's that?
No.
Just turn it all off. Because I don't know if you're like me, but it's gotten to the point where I get phantom vibrations in my pocket. And I think to myself, someone's trying to get in touch with me, right? It's gotten to the point where every 15 or 20 minutes, if I haven't checked the darn thing, I think I'm going to miss something. It's a sign of us becoming addicted, I must tell you. And it's something that we have to be a little careful of. Because if we want to have an inner life, if we want to be able to connect in a genuine, present way with what's most important to us, right? Our feelings, our values, our sense of experience of presence with one another, our sense of God, it means that we have to create some boundaries in our lives to, in a sense, protect that inner life. You know what I'm saying? Right? How many of you have no idea what I'm saying? You like have mastered like how to use your technology, and you feel like you have a really good sense of being able to, I don't know, manage the inside world and the outside world. Does anybody like that besides the gentleman in the back? I don't feel like any of us have mastered it. I feel like we're all kind of working it out. So we turn our cell phones off. The first exercise I'm going to ask you to do is really simple, right? I just want you to relax. Isn't that nice? I want you to relax in such a way that you feel really able to connect to your inner self. So I'd ask you to just find a comfortable and sort of dignified posture in your chair with both feet on the floor, okay? And take everything off your laps. And if you can, just kind of like, you know, stretch out a little bit before you find your position. All right? Hello, everybody.
Chloe, come here.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Can
So the first thing I want you to do is, this is a kind of centering exercise. And in order to get centered, it means in some ways that we've got to withdraw all of our attention from what's going on around us so that we can pay attention to what's going on within us. So I'm going to ask you simply to close your eyes, right? And I'm going to be checking, right? I've got your purses and everything guarded. No one's going to steal anything. No one's going to, well, I can't guarantee no one's going to tickle you, but, you know, that's up to your neighbor, right? So I invite you just to put your feet flat on the floor and find a kind of comfortable posture and close your eyes. And I'd like you to begin this sense of connecting to your inner self by starting just with the physical sensations of your feet contacting the floor. So if your eyes aren't closed, it'll be hard to kind of connect with that. But if you close your eyes, just feel the pressure of your feet contacting the bottom of your shoes, that sort of pressure connection. And feel, as you're in your chair, feel your sitting bones kind of resting in the chair. The sitting bones is kind of a more dignified way than saying like your butt, but right, I want you just to sort of feel the presence of yourself sitting at this moment. And I want you to pay attention to the physical sensations in your body. To the sense of, those pressure points, to whether you're warm or cold, to any place where your clothing is tight, to that feeling of the softness of your clothing. And as you're feeling the physical sensations of your body as you sit, notice how you're collecting your attention from all the places it's been over the course of the last 8 or 9 hours, right? By bringing your attention to physical sensations, you're focusing, you're concentrating your attention. And if I asked you to relax that concentration and just to allow your mind to go free, it would run off to all kinds of other places. Any place but this present moment with you sitting here in this room. Not because you don't want to be here, but because that's the way the brain works. You would fly off to the beach someplace down in Florida. Or you'd fly ahead to the assignments that you have to do next week. Or you'd start dwelling on something that happened in the past. But when you bring your attention to those physical sensations, it helps you to come into this present moment. Now I'd ask you to do something else while you've got your eyes closed and you're feeling that physical presence. I'd invite you just to take a very conscious, deep breath. Breathe in and slowly exhale. Breathe out. And I'd ask you to do that again. Take a nice deep breath. Inhale. And slowly exhale your breath. Now, this might have been the first time you consciously paid attention to your breath all day. Maybe in a long time. We don't have to worry about our breath. It breathes for us, right? It's a beautiful thing about the autonomous nervous system. But when we consciously pay attention to our breath, it can calm our thoughts. It can help us to actually quiet anxieties or fears. And our breath brings us into this present moment. Now I want you to not only pay attention to your bodily sensations and to your breath, but I want you just to pay attention to whatever you're feeling at this moment. If you have any emotions or feelings. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Sometimes we're really out of touch with feelings as they're passing on through, like the weather. Or sometimes those feelings come up on us like a storm and they overwhelm us. But I want you just to sort of pay attention to whatever you might be feeling at the end of this day. And if nothing, that's okay. Now I hope you feel a sense at least of being at some relative peace in this moment. And just as Jesus told the disciples when they asked him how to pray, he told them, go into the inner room and shut the door and turn your heart to God, your Father. So you've entered into your inner room. You've shut the door to external stimulation and everything going on around, and now you're in that inner room. And I invite you to become aware to the Holy Spirit's presence in that inner room with you. You don't have to go looking for it. It's like a quiet, constant presence. If you like, it's a little bit like a candle lit in a room with no windows or breeze, and it just has a nice, constant flame. So I invite you just to be quiet with us for a moment or two, attending to that presence of God within you, and to noticing how it feels to be quiet in that present place. Not only is God present within you as a temple of the Holy Spirit, that's what our bodies are described as, but God is also here amongst us. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, Jesus said, in my name, there I am. And so not only is God within you, but God is amongst us, between us. So in a moment or two, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes and to share what you experienced with somebody next to you, trusting that we're having a kind of experience together, right, as a community. So I'm going to count down from 3 to 1 and ask you to open your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Nobody nodded off, except this guy over here. Are you still with me? You feel pretty relaxed? How many people felt like they wandered off to Tahiti somewhere during that 5 minutes or so? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, a couple people. How many feel like you actually were kind of present to yourself, maybe for the first time today? Raise your hands. Oh my gosh, a lot of you. Okay. I want you to turn to your neighbor and just share a little bit about what did you experience, and then I'm going to ring the bell. That's what the bell's for. And I'll call your attention back, all right? What did you experience? Very simple. 1 minute.
I saw a light.
But if you download the app on your phone,
I did. Do I have to I just pick it up? Recording it. Okay, I felt really good. That I love that stuff.
I feel relaxed.
Yeah, so do I. I'll just slowly pan.
What do you think about when you said it was good? Any other pro apps, and then that thing was just better.
Ariana.
CBA GoPro, not
I just want to let you know I felt like... Don't say anything stupid, you're on camera.
Never mind, I can't say it now. I like that. Do you have an experience? Because they didn't.
I felt...
Me too, I thought his voice was God's voice.
That's too much.
Okay, I was serious about the 1 minute only because we've got 3 other speakers, and I'm conscious I might go a little over, so I want to be respectful of time. Anybody want to just say a word or two about what they experienced and whether or not that very simple exercise was valuable to you? Anybody? What would you say? She experienced being a princess. Wow. You've got a good imagination. But that's a nice feeling, right? Being a princess. Who else? Yes, tell me.
I experienced inner peace for the first time.
Wow. Tell me your name.
My name is Caleb.
All right, Caleb, the check is in the mail. Yes.
I thought I was in a tropical world with a warm
Okay, so did you actually intentionally imagine that, or did you just allow your imagination to carry you there? Okay, it's really interesting, the power of the imagination to bring us to places that are really positive or really negative, right? And so one of the challenges is, how do we in some ways master the mind so that when it brings us to scary, dark places, we know how to reel it back, right? Does that make sense? That's one of the very powerful benefits of becoming a person who meditates and prays. So good thing to know about. Anyone else? Yes, Mary.
I felt like I had gone through the whole day and it was like a dream, and then just now it was the real part of the day. I don't know if that's a
Wow! I told someone you were deep, and you were. You know what? I think a lot of us walk through our lives on automatic pilot. We drive places and wonder, oh my gosh, like I didn't really pay attention to anything, but now I'm here. Right? We go through life and it's rushing by us like a train. Sometimes we don't pay attention because other things preoccupy us. But practicing, noticing what's going on, being present in an intentional way, we get a lot more out of life. A lot of us, too, are afraid that we're going to miss something. So we're constantly looking to other people to figure out what I should be thinking, feeling, how I should dress, instead of paying attention to what's inside me, right? So a lot of our tendencies to kind of get distracted around ourselves take us away from what this present moment is all about. And I have to say something about this present moment. It's not magic, but this is where God is, here, now. And when we tune into God's presence here and now, the meaning and value of life all of a sudden expands. If we're focused on the past, we're missing the present moment. If we're leaning into the future out of anxiety and fear and need to prepare, we're missing the present moment. Right? When in the Old Testament, Moses is on the mountainside and he hasn't really gotten to know God yet, and God appears in the burning bush, what does God say to Moses? Anybody know? The parents are on the hot seat here, because I expect you to know. What does he hear from the burning bush, right? When Moses is there on the mountainside with his flocks. It's something about the present moment, in a sense. Anybody? Yes?
Take off your sandals, for this is holy ground.
Nice job. You get the prize. What's your name?
Sebastian.
Sebastian, you got it right. God says, this ground you stand on at this very moment is holy. Not just because there was a burning bush there, but because every moment you pay attention to my presence, I am here now. And if you are fully present here now, I am with you. You're not alone. It's pretty reassuring, isn't it? Okay, so the first step of this process is figuring out how to pay attention to this moment and acknowledging God's presence. Are you ready for part 2? Okay, close your eyes.
Yeah, Tristan.
I
Tristan's
want
in
you
it one.
just to kind of go back to that space. Return to the moment by taking a nice breath. Return to that inner room where that light's shining. Where someone felt like a princess, another felt like they were in the tropics. Where you feel at peace, you feel connected to yourself. Feel as though your own soul is present. And in that space, I invite you just to allow to come to your consciousness whatever you're most grateful for today. Whatever you're most grateful for. And again, you don't have to force it. just come kind of naturally. Sometimes we try too hard in our meditation to force things. But what we're grateful for comes up to us a little bit like, you know, a squirrel might if you've got a nut there. Just kind of quietly makes its way. And when something comes into view, whatever you're most grateful for at the end of this day today, I want you just to unpack whatever it is a bit. What does it feel like, right, to pay attention with gratitude? Was it something simple, like the fact that you probably had a hot shower today and most people in the world don't? Was it the fact that you had an encounter with someone today that really left a real warm spot in your heart? Was it the fact that you did well in a project? That your team is winning right now? Whatever it might be that you're grateful for. You to turn to your neighbor and share with them what is it that you're grateful for and why. 1 minute.
I don't know, it immediately came to my head. No. Yeah. I don't know either.
I think you have to turn the Wi-Fi on when you turn it on.
Oh, well, I didn't do
Why
that,
do you
so.
need Wi-Fi on?
It connects to the phone so that you can see what you're recording.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think it's you. You clearly have them in camera.
Yeah.
Talking about other people's
I
camera.
clearly am, but like, I want to see what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean though. But yeah. Why don't you just turn your...
I did. It's
Turn the Wi-Fi like...
What were you most grateful for?
Really, who did you...
What were you most grateful for, Chloe?
My friend.
I like your jacket.
Yeah, I hate to rush. Who wants to share something that just spontaneously struck them that I'm really grateful for this? Anybody? Yes.
I'm really grateful for my family.
So that just spontaneously came up to you,
Yep.
right? All right, fantastic. What's your name?
Katie.
Katie. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so a sense of you're automatically coming to that as your place of gratitude, your friendships. Okay, tell me your name. Anna. Anna, thanks, Anna. Anybody else? I know Caleb's up there, but I'm going to give another person a chance. Yes.
To be able to go to collecting.
Wow, for this community, for this opportunity. So, gratitude is amazing. Most saints and mystics in our tradition of Christianity have thought that gratitude is actually the quickest path to happiness. It's also a very powerful motivation for generosity. If you live with a sense of gratitude for the small things in life and for the big things, opportunities for an education, right? For a family that loves you, friendships, food on the table, right? The opportunities in your lives to travel, right? I heard all kinds of great travel stories last night. These things fill our tanks and they give us a sense that life is abundant. And if we believe that life is abundant, we're going to tend to be generous with what we have. You know what I'm saying? Like if you feel like the glass is half full, you're going to tend to be more likely to share that glass with someone who might be thirsty. If the opposite is the case, and I'm someone who believes that the world is all about scarcity, then what am I going to try to do? I'm going to hang on to what little I have. And you know what? Even what little I have is going to seem to slip away from me. And I'm always going to be trying to get more. So if my attitude is that what I have is not enough, I'm never going to be happy because I'm constantly going to be grasping for more. It's not that we couldn't and shouldn't be ambitious, that we shouldn't strive, but if we're not at some level content and happy with what we have and who we are at this very, very moment, we are probably not going to be happy tomorrow or the next day or the next day. The only way to really find true happiness and peace is to find the abundance here, now. Does this make sense, or do I sound crazy? Right? So check yourself, because I slipped into many times in my own life where I was all about what I wanted next and not what I had in the moment. I remember walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City. Have you ever been to Fifth Avenue in New York City? Right, it's pretty schwanky, right? And there's all kinds of nice stuff in the windows. And I remember thinking, I want that, and that, and that, and that. Right? And then I remember seeing the two towers of the Cathedral of St. Patrick right there on Fifth Avenue. I thought, wow, there's like St. Patrick's there, and those two towers are pointing up to the sky and reminding me of God. And then on the other side is Rockefeller Center with Atlas. Do you know who Atlas is? Right? With the world on his shoulders, and he's down on one knee because he can barely hold it up. That's the difference between having a sense of abundance, right, and your spirit light aspiring up to God, and feeling like you're trying to grasp what the world's got, and it's pulling you down. That's my visual reminder. Right? When you think about the things you're grateful for on a daily basis, it will fill your tank. And if you help people who are down and out, right, to think about what they're grateful for, they will instantly feel sparks of happiness come back with their lives. Are you ready to do another round? Okay. Go back to that inner room. I ask you to find that place again. Take a deep breath. Take that breath and return to that place where you know that God has been present to our ancestors in faith, the prophets and the saints, and all holy people, and not just of our tradition, but of many traditions. And you know that God loves you, and that there's nothing you could do tomorrow to earn any more of God's love than God already has for you at this very moment. And I invite you to go and allow your mind to relax for a moment, and the same thing, to allow to come to mind a moment where you felt a sense of something sacred or holy. A moment when you felt especially close to God as you're thinking about who God is. And it may be that you're wondering for, or looking for a little more guidance in what that might have looked like or felt like, but I want to just keep it open. Anything that you would define as kind of a moment when you felt close to God in the recent past. And is there anyone who needs a little bit more time? Raise your hand. Okay. So then I'm going to ask you to return to this place. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now this is maybe a little more personal. But again, because we're friends here, right? I invite you to trust your neighbor, right, with something that you feel is really important to you. And I invite you to share. What is it, or when was it that you experienced some sense of God's presence? And it could be the simplest thing, it could be something more profound, whatever, right? A minute.
When did you feel God?
Like when I'm having a bad day, I'm sad about it.
It's my ring.
That was when my dad had like spots all on his head. Like came from his heart. That ring. And
It's got. It was then that you carried me on the inside of it.
he's like okay now. He's like getting better.
Mine was when at Nazareth Farm we were all laying out on top of the bus, and it was like perfectly clear because there are no lights there, like at night. So it was just like the whole like sky was just stars. It was like the sickest thing I've ever seen. It just like was really peaceful, and it was just like you could feel something.
Okay, so give us a little feel. What were the kinds of things that struck you as places or times when you felt God's presence? Anybody? I know it's a little bit daring to ask you to do this in a big group, but
So I was at this place called Nazareth Farm, and we were outside like in the middle of the night, and there's no like electricity or lights there at night, so like the whole sky was just black and it was just covered in stars, and we were all kind of just laying out on the grass and like looking up the sky, and you could just like kind of tell that something was there with you.
what's your name?
Annie.
Annie. It's so funny. My earliest experience of God was identical to that. Under the stars at night with friends. There's a camp out. I was the last one awake. Everyone else is snoring away. And the Milky Way. And shooting stars. And I'm awake. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm part of this. Right? This feeling so small, but like something there. Something's there. St. Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, was very fond of walking out under the stars at night because it lifted his spirits and made him feel close to God. How many other people had memories or feelings under the stars, by the way? Yeah, a lot of us. Actually, when I left the airlines last night after dinner, I was noticing how bright the stars were. It was really cold and really clear, and I thought of that night. Right? Who else had recollections or experiences that they want to share? Anybody else? Yes.
First time I came to CBA,
Yeah, and what did you feel?
I just felt like it would be a great chance to meet new people, have new experiences, connect with God. And
So when you feel like you find a community of like kindred spirits, that's pretty awesome, right? Yeah, where you could be yourself, right? Where you could meet new people, where you could explore your own growing edges, where you can find your potential tapped. That's pretty awesome, right? Who else? Yes.
There was one time on the Boys Overnight Retreat, and I was the first one up. It was like 5 a.m. And so I went outside, and there was a lake right next to where we were. And I was sitting by myself at the lake, and it was just so like calming and peaceful, and you just kind of something about it.
Yeah, thanks, Will. There's times when nature just takes our breath away, brings us into the moment. All right. How many people had experiences out in nature? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you, most of you. Now, how many people had experiences that were more like churchy experiences? Raise your hands. Okay? It's a minority in this group. And I actually want to applaud the group, right, in a sense, for the sense that your sensibilities are open wide, that God is not confined to church spaces, that God's Spirit is ranging wide and free, and that in every dimension of your human experience, you're going to find, if you look, God's presence. That's important. Because as much as we are focused in church on the Word and the Scriptures bring to life a whole living tradition of relationship with God, and they connect us with all of our ancestors in faith, and they give us all these resources I've been drawing from this for this presentation, right? Jesus' own teachings on prayer, like that's where we're coming into this. But it's also about our having our own relationship with God, each of us, just as living and breathing as your relationships with one another, with your families, with your friends. that means that we have to take a certain responsibility to check in and also to seek God, even when we don't feel like God's present, even in the hard stuff. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to do 2 more exercises. And how are we doing on time? I know I'm going over. Anybody want to push me out yet? Because I'm serious, I could go, and I know that we've got more people, and I know that there's folks going on to practice at 6:30, so, all right. Do you mind if we do 2 more? Who's running this show? What do you think?
We need to move along.
Okay, so we'll do 1 more, not 2. Did you see that little negotiation? I used to be the dean of a business school, so, okay. All right, so the negotiation is this. I'm going to ask you to go back to that inner room 1 more time, and this is a really important one. Because God's easy to find in the things we're grateful for. God's easy to find when we just still ourselves to find that inner light. But sometimes God's not so easy to find in the struggles and the hardships and the loneliness and the grief and the anger and the other range and spectrum of our human experience. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and go back to that inner room. And I'm going to ask you to use your breath to bring you back to that place of quiet and peace and stillness. And I want you to consider some dimension of your life where things are not exactly where you'd like them to be. A place where you're feeling a little struggle, a little hardship. It could be in a relationship with a family or friend. It could be that you're struggling with a kind of issue at school here and feeling kind of heavy burdened by it. It might be that you're feeling a little confused or uncertain about the future. But whatever it is, I invite you to just kind of look at that and allow God to speak to you and support you as you face that challenge. So I'm going to be quiet for about 2-3 minutes here. We'll give you space to allow God's own voice to speak in your heart. And even if you don't hear God speaking words, there may be images, or God might be inspiring a certain feeling for you as you think about these challenges. And receive that as a gift. Back into the present. 3, 2, 1. No, we don't have time to share this time. But how many of you felt like you had a sense that God was offering you some grace in response to what you were feeling challenged by? Okay. Be bold. If you had some feeling, really show your hands. Okay, that's great. It takes practice to do this, and sometimes we might not have like the clearest sense of the challenge that we're trying to face in the first place. But I guarantee, right, when we bring those dark things, those challenges to God, God helps to transform them and for us to find light and healing and grace in them. Okay. There's so many more things I could say, but I'm not going to. But I'm really grateful for your time and your attention here. My final points would be this. Look for God in the present moment and find God in your experience. And when you find and discern God in your experience, God will help you to live the life God wants you to live. Okay? Thank you very much.
Right? When you're, let's just say you're driving, right? What are the things that you need to pay attention to if you're driving? Caleb's got all the answers tonight. All right, Caleb was up first. We got to go with Caleb.
Okay.
What's that?
You gotta know where your destination is.
Got to know where your destination is. Good. All right. So hopefully you do know your destination. Okay. What else?
Other drivers.
Okay. Pay attention to other drivers. Okay. Me, I don't care if they're in the back. You know, they're behind me. That's good. Okay. Annie?
Street signs.
Street signs. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about. Right. I want to talk about signs of faith. Right. We need other people to help us get to our destination. We need people to help us get through this modern world. Are there signs in the modern world that fool us? Absolutely, right? Sometimes we make wrong turns, sometimes we get off the wrong exit, right? There are signs that mislead us. We gotta pay attention to the signs on our journey. So tonight, I want to talk about signs, and I want to talk about two signs in particular. For me, I like to look at signs in my life as people, right? People help me to keep me on my journey. They keep me on my path. And I'm going to talk about two individuals tonight, right? So let me give you a little story first. I got my first teaching job in Long Island, right? At a Catholic school there. I was very happy. I was hired in July, so I had a couple of months to think about it. You know, I was 21, just starting out, you know, just starting my teaching career. Very happy to have gotten the job in the first place. All right. I was at the school for 3 years before we lost a great deal of money. We had some mismanagement. We had some issues with the school. School went through some leadership issues, some financial issues, and a new group took over the school. Right? It became a very difficult place to teach. A number of my colleagues, people who I had established a relationship with, were let go because when the new school came in, they had to let many of the older teachers go, teachers who had been making a little bit more money, right? And they wanted to start off fresh. So, you know, all of these mentors, all of these people who I had known, you know, as a young teacher that I looked up to, were leaving the school. That was a very difficult situation for me. The next couple of years were very discouraging. So my wife and I had the opportunity to move up here to sunny Syracuse. I mean that. It was sunny, wasn't it sunny the last couple of days? Absolutely, okay? All right. You know, both my wife and I are Des Moines grads. We knew people, so we figured, you know, this would be a great place to network. You know, my wife would be a little closer to her mom and her family, so it gave her an opportunity to see, you know, her family quite a bit more often. Now, when we moved to Syracuse, I looked at it as a fresh start. This was an opportunity for me. Right? I thought, you know what? I love teaching. I want to continue teaching. But I vowed to myself, you know what? Looking at all my friends, it would be nice to make money, just like them. All right? So when I came up to Syracuse, I vowed that I would look for a public school job, because only a public school job, okay, would make me happy. That's obviously I was looking for the wrong sign. Not to say that money is a bad thing. Right? Money is not a bad thing. Okay, I can attest to the fact that I have been here for 24 years, and when my children were growing up, we went to Disney 5 times. All right, so there was plenty of money coming in at home. I was able to secure a public school position. It was a part-time position, but the way I looked at it was, I'm in. I got my foot in the door. All right, this is a part-time thing. It's going to lead to a full-time thing. Okay, my life is set. I'm ready to go. All right, I don't need anything else. I have everything I need right now. Then I received a phone call from Brother Stephen McCabe. Right, there's not many of you in the room that know Brother Stephen. That's too bad. Brother Stephen called and explained that he had an opening at Christian Brothers Academy. Right? And I explained to Brother that I had already had this part-time position, right? And, you know, being that it was Brother Stephen McCabe, he said, well, you know what, why don't you come to CBA anyway, right? And just talk, right? And so, you know, he brought me in. Guess what I wore to the quote interview?
A suit.
Yeah, I wore a suit. Okay. And it was just Brother and I. All right? Yeah. It was just Brother and I. It was the most unusual interview I ever had, right? He didn't interview me. I felt as if I was interviewing him, right? And by the way, the call I got was the Sunday before Labor Day, which was Monday. Right? So, you know, Brother Stephen was obviously in desperate straits. Well, you know, Brother had walked me through the school. We had a nice conversation. You know, he talked about the community here at Christian Brothers Academy. You know, it didn't take long. Again, if you knew Brother Stephen, it didn't take long for him to win me over. I had explained to Brother, look, Brother, I have this commitment, right? I have this part-time commitment, and he just simply looked at me, and he said, Dave, do you want to teach here at Christian Brothers Academy? And I said, yes, Brother, I do want to teach here. And he said, I will take care of it, right? So he, you know, later on he brought me into his office. He sat down, talked to the superintendent, okay, of the district where I was. I mean, I could hear the superintendent yelling at him on the phone, all right, saying, you're taking our teacher. Brother Stephen, with a smile on his face, just kind of nodded to me, shook his head, and said everything would be fine. You know, to me, I've always seen Brother Stephen as a sign of God's grace in the world. He's a sign for me that I'm glad I didn't miss out on. Interestingly enough, tomorrow, it's kind of interesting the way that this came up. Tomorrow is the 3rd anniversary of his passing. So that's interesting. The second individual, the second sign in my life is my dad. Again, you know, when you're growing up, you don't pay too much attention to your parents. That true? That true? You know, obviously, you know, as a kid, you have your own life, right? You know, why would you pay too much attention to your parents? Because they're thinking about you all the time, right? I mean, that's what they're there for, right? All right. So it happened to be one summer. I worked in New York City. I worked at a financial institution. And my dad was a vice president at Citibank. So he worked downtown too. And quite often we would take the train in together, right? You know, even as a 20-year-old, I was still caught up with myself. So I didn't really pay too much attention to my dad, right? And we would often go in, we'd sit together, right? And, you know, he would read something. I never paid much attention to what he read. And I would read a novel, right? You know, as part of this journey of faith, I'm always reading a novel. I'm on a train or a bus. I like to read things, right? One time, I just, you know, and by the way, we didn't ignore each other, right? We did have conversations. There was some conversation going on there. I just happened to look over, right, and notice what he was reading. Right now, but, being a vice president at Citibank, he's reading the Wall Street Journal, right? Or he's reading a Gresham Now or something like that. He's reading a prayer book, right? And that struck me, and I, again, being 20 years old, I went back to my book and said, yeah, okay, great, he's reading. But asked him later on, okay, that's nice. That's a nice thing. Okay? But why? And he said it helped him to prepare his day. Right? He always felt like he had a good day when he had that time alone. That moment of faith where he said, I could shut everything else out. I had that opportunity in the morning to collect myself, to be in touch with what I wanted to do that day, the people I had to talk to, meetings I had to go to, and he said that moment gave me an opportunity to ground myself, right, and start my day. That's always one of the things that I've appreciated, and in fact, I have the opportunity. The way I look at it is, I have the opportunity to do that with my students 5 times a day, right? And again, that helps me get grounded, not just for my day, but for each class. And as I said, my dad continues to be a sign of faith for me. So be aware of the signs, okay, that you see around you. As a good traveler, you should be prepared never to miss the important signs. And in fact, sometimes we need a little help. We need a tour book to help us with our destination. Every once in a while, okay, when I'm not sure, okay, where I'm going, okay, I refer to one of my favorite Christian writers, right? Talking about this motif of the journey. Okay, Mr. Horan will know this. Thomas Merton, okay, wrote a prayer, and if some of you guys, okay, some of you seniors, you might have remembered this. I read this the first week we had class. All right, so I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it for you now. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I'll never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the valley of death? I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you'll never leave me to face my perils alone. We reinforce that idea almost every time we pray here at CBA. That idea when we say, let us remember what?
We're in the holy presence of God.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm Katrina, and I can't tell you how honored I am to be standing here in front of all of you. And so thank you all for coming here to support us. So what's more modern than technology? It's pretty awesome, right? Take your smartphones, for example. Hopefully they're still in the OFF position by now, but in less than a second, you can unlock them. And once it's unlocked, the possibilities are endless. Have a question on your history homework about Abraham Lincoln and need a crash course on his whole life because you didn't pay attention in class? Google will help you with that. Need to tell your mom that you need a ride home after school because one of your activities got canceled? Just send her a quick text message. Did you misspell a word in that text message and now you're too lazy to go back and fix it? Don't worry, autocorrect's got your back. With our smartphones, we've pretty much got the whole world right in the palm of our hands, ready to be explored whenever we want with just a simple tap on the screen. How much better can it get? And it doesn't just end there. I mean, look around you. Think about all the things you use in your everyday lives. Believe it or not, there was a a time when you couldn't record your favorite TV show and watch it on demand. There was a time when people communicated by letters instead of instant messages, and you had to wait days for a response. There was a time when Google didn't exist, and if you had some research to do, you actually had to go to the library and open up a book to find the information yourself. Many kids today can't even believe that people used to live like that because we've grown so accustomed to all these high-tech gadgets to help us along. Every year they come out with something faster, smarter, more efficient, and people go crazy wanting to get the best and newest technology. We've grown so used to things just doing all the hard work for us that when some waiting and effort on our part is required, we'd rather just hit the escape key and X out. But in doing that, I think we've lost our connection to our faith in God too. I mean, let's face it, God is no Google. When you ask him a question, he won't give you an answer in 0.25 seconds. The results he gives you won't be nicely laid out in black and white with the most relevant results on the first page. God doesn't work like that, but I think we forget that sometimes. We like to think of him as the God who could turn rocks into bread or water into wine in just an instant. He's the one who parted the Red Sea for Moses and the Israelites when they needed to escape, and he's the one who raised his son from the dead in just 3 days. So if he can do all that, then why can't he cure our dad from cancer when we ask him to? Why can't he get our crush to notice us and ask us out to the dance next week? Why can't he make all our problems just go away and answer our questions when we pray? If he can't do simple things like that for us, then what's the point of even believing in him at all? But there is a point. Just because he doesn't give us exactly what we want doesn't mean that we shouldn't believe or that he doesn't care. Because he does care. It's just that sometimes we doubt that. Because if he really does care about us, then why does he let bad things happen to us? And if he cares about us, why doesn't he answer our prayers? Now, I know I'm just a high school senior and I don't have a degree in theology or even a 100 in religion class for that matter, but I do have life experience. I think I have the answers to those 2 questions. I mean, first of all, those bad things that we claim that God lets happen to us, are they really bad at all? I know that it's hard to lose loved ones, and I know that it's hard to fail. I know that it's hard to be sick and sad and stressed out. And because of that, it's easy to just blame God and think that he wants us to be miserable for the rest of our lives. But in fact, that's not true at all. He cares about us so much, and he would never do anything to hurt us. He does everything for our own good, whether we realize it or not. Every loss can teach a lesson. Every struggle can give us strength. We learn from what hurts us as much as from what loves us. We may not like what happens to us, but that's because we just live in the moment, and we don't see that the struggles of today can become the successes of tomorrow. Everything happens for a reason. You just have to remember. God knows what's best for all of us, so just trust him. He knows what he's doing. And to the second question, why doesn't God answer our prayers? My answer is, how do we know he doesn't? When we pray for things, we have a very narrow idea of how we want them to be answered. And when they don't happen exactly as we want them to, we get discouraged. When I was growing up, my mom always told me that God works in mysterious ways. And now I know that that couldn't be more true. For example, how many of you like potato chips? Okay, that's most of you. Well, potato chips actually weren't created on purpose. In 1853, in a restaurant near Saratoga Springs, Chef George Crumb was experiencing the frustration of a complacent customer who repeatedly kept sending back his fried potatoes because they were too soggy. Chef Crumb was fed up with all these complaints. So in annoyance, he took his knife. Don't worry, he didn't kill the guy. He took his knife and he sliced the potatoes as thinly as possible, threw them in some grease and coated them with salt, and sent them back out. The pesky customer ended up loving them. And thus, potato chips were born. All because of some annoying person who got under Chef Crumb's nerves. I know that's kind of a silly example, but think about how that applies to life in general. Great things can come from our misfortunes. Things may not happen as we expect them to, but they always happen exactly as they should. Maybe in losing your car keys, you'll end up being saved from an accident. Maybe in missing your bus, you'll end up meeting the love of your life. Who knows? Remember, everything happens for a reason again. And remember that the smallest seed can sometimes grow into the biggest tree. However, that all takes time. If you pray for something today, it won't always happen tomorrow. might have to wait for days, months, years for something to happen. And because of all the technology that I talked about earlier, I think that people are becoming more impatient and less willing to wait for results. We seem to have forgotten that sometimes the best things in life are the ones worth waiting for. Now, I know a thing or two about waiting. Waiting to get to school, waiting to board a plane, waiting to hear back from colleges. In my short 17 years on this earth, I've actually done quite a bit of waiting. So I know how hard it is, but I also know that it's worth it in the end. Many times my mom and I would be down in New York City to catch the bus back home after visiting my family in the Philippines, and waiting for the bus down there isn't the most pleasant experience. We're standing in line for hours at a time, hungry, sleep deprived, surrounded by smelly and scary looking people. I would often wish that we could just skip all the waiting and teleport back home. But unfortunately, technology isn't that advanced yet. So we just had to continue waiting and endure it. But when the doors finally opened and we were finally able to board that bus and slouch down into our nice comfy seats, that feeling of relief and satisfaction made all the annoyances totally worth it. And the same can be said for life. If you just hang in there long enough and keep your faith, the rewards in the end will make all your sacrifices worth it, and you'll be glad that you didn't give up. I admit there were many times in my life that I felt like giving up. I don't want to turn this into a whole pity party for me, but like anyone else, I've had my share of troubles, and my life hasn't been perfect. There have been times when I felt like my life was insignificant or that I was just doomed for failure. But in time, I realized that none of that was true. After spending some time thinking about all the things that happened in my past, which is something I like to do in all that time I spend waiting, I realized that everything served a bigger purpose. I can trace the person that I am today back to all the experiences and people I met back then. It's kind of like one of those connect the dots pictures. At first you look at it and it's like, what the heck is this? Nothing seems to make sense. But if you take the time to connect the dots, you'll see that a bigger picture starts to form, and that all those seemingly random dots help serve a bigger purpose and fit into the whole picture. So when you get a chance, try connecting the dots in your life. You might not get a whole picture right now, and you might not get the picture you want to see, but just hang in there till the end, and trust God to know what He's doing, and make the best of what you have now. Because in the end, the final product will be amazing, and far better than the smartest phone anyone can come up with. Because technology is great, but God is pretty awesome too, even if He doesn't work over Wi-Fi. Thank you, everyone.
Seriously. Like, the good news for you is I'm the last speaker of the night, but the bad news is I just had to follow Katrina. I'm going to do the best I can, but she was pretty amazing, as was everybody else. But first I want to thank the peer ministers for asking me to speak tonight. I'm humbled that you actually picked me and wanted me to do this, really. It means a lot, so thank you. And I'm happy to be here, even though that's a really tough act to follow, because I always enjoy sharing my faith with other people, and I'm really thankful to have the opportunity to do that here tonight in this forum, a little different than the usual forum in the classroom that I'm used to. So I'm glad to be here. For me, my faith has always been the center of my life. I honestly cannot remember a time when it wasn't. I don't even really know how to separate my faith from any one part of my life, because it's never really been just a part of my life. For me, my faith has always been the glue that holds my whole life together. It's been the whole of my life. And because of that, I've always tried to live my life in a way that makes my life itself be a witness to my relationship with Christ and my faith in Him. I haven't always been perfect at that. My daughter could attest to that. But I've tried, and kind of like Father said, that I think that God recognizes our efforts. So I know that I've always tried to do that. And because of that, that's what makes my job here for me such a blessing in my life, because I'm able to interject my faith at my job all the time, and it's always acceptable. And being able to do that really makes living my faith in the modern world even easier. So I know that you're probably like, well, that's great. You're an adult, you're a teacher, so that's easy for you to say that you could do that. But at one time, not too long ago, I was in your shoes, and I was a student in high school. And I have no idea what Katrina's talking about with that whole not being able to Google and all of that. I don't even know what that means. Anyway, but so I was a kid in high school too, and believe it or not, I was faced with the same kinds of things that you were. The pressure to fit in, you know, temptations to do certain things, wanting to be accepted by those around you. But for me, even then, I couldn't separate myself from my faith because I couldn't be me without wearing my faith on my sleeve. It was just who I was. I grew up in a very devoutly Catholic family. We went to Mass every day, not just Sunday, every day. We said the rosary every night. So anybody that knew me knew that that's just how we were. That's how my life went. So if you were going to accept me and be friends with me, you had to accept that that was my life and that my faith was going to influence more than just what I did in church on Sunday. My faith was going to influence the decisions I made about where I may go with my friends or what I may participate in. My faith was going to influence when I could go somewhere. I can remember a bunch of times where I'd be with some friends and they wanted to go out, and we hadn't quite yet said the family rosary, and so that meant I wasn't going to go until that was done. And so my friends had one of two choices. They could either join in the family rosary, which, believe it or not, they did, even the non-Catholic ones, or they could just take off without me and go, and sometimes they did that too. But nevertheless, that was my life, and I was proud of being that way. And that's not to say that it was always easy, because it wasn't. While my friends accepted that, you all know that you go to high school with more than just your friends, right? I was teased a lot. I was made fun of about that. I was mocked, and it certainly wasn't easy. It's never easy to be treated that way. But I did find comfort in knowing that I was, no matter what, true to myself and true to my faith, and that I was authentic in my faith. That it wasn't just about being strong in my faith when I was around my parents, that I was authentic all the time, no matter who I was with, no matter how difficult it was. And honestly, it was so much easier for me to be proud of my faith than it was to be somebody different, depending on which situation I was in. I didn't have to worry about being me this way with these people or me this way with those people. I just was I was who I was. My faith was what it was. It was always on the forefront, and if you knew me, then you knew that's what it was. And you could take it or leave it. And I like to think that I've continued to be that way today, and I like to think that the students that have had me hopefully have recognized that I continue to be unapologetic about my faith and proud of my faith, and I try to use any opportunity I can to talk about my faith or bring it into a conversation when maybe it wasn't headed that way, but if I can, I will. People that have been in my classroom, you know I have those little rubber fetuses on my desk, right? Well, the whole reason I do this is not because I love rubber fetuses, although I've grown really fond of them. But the reason I do that is because it provides an opportunity to dialogue with you guys about abortion, and it gives me an opportunity to teach you about what our church teaches us about the sanctity of life. So it's an opportunity in a different way to share my faith with you. And I do that because it brings me joy. My faith brings me joy, and my faith brings me peace. And so my challenge to you guys is to begin to be authentic in your faith. Learn to live your faith in all parts of your life. Not just have your faith be a small part of it. Have it be in all of it. Not just talk about your faith when you're in church on Sunday or when you're in religion class or at home with your family when nobody else is looking. Be proud of that. And it's not easy. I know it's not easy. I've been there, and I still even now continue to sometimes be disagreed with or teased a little because I'm always talking about God. That's what I've heard, right? But you do it anyway, and know that God gives us the grace to get through those difficult times because the payoff is huge. And the sooner you can begin to learn to be authentic in your faith, the more joy you'll be filled with, and the more peaceful your life will be. So thank you again for having me. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Summers. Can we have another round of applause for all the speakers tonight? Set this up. Insight on what faith means in the modern world, and I hope you can carry on their message as you leave tonight. Everyone, have a safe drive tonight.